everyone. Welcome. And today I am super excited to be sharing with you my recently launched book, Dating Over 50, a modern guide to unlocking love and second chances. And if you are familiar with Later Daters, which is the Netflix program that Michelle Obama produced, you will know that it's been such a super hit and so well done. One of the reasons I think that Later Daters have done so well is because they had a coach that could just be there for them, help them to just process what was going on, and just guide them, help them to reflect. And so this is for me, I said this is the big difference between Love is Blind, where there is no dating coach, and Later Daters, where there was a dating coach. So today I am presenting to you how you can have a dating coach 24/7. So I hope that you stay with to the end. I've got some fantastic news at the end, so please stay right till the end for that. So let's dive into, I'm going to go through sort of highlights of the book and just how you can just benefit from the insights and help that it can help you as you start your dating journey. So let's dive right into that. So the first thing that I do is I look at the landscape of which has changed. I mean, when you were dating in your 20s and 30s, that the landscape was very different. What are the three main different areas I would pick up was, number one is dating apps. We didn't have dating apps. You met in a very organic way. You met at a camp, through friends, at church. And so there were no dating apps to talk about. Then, society has had some cultural shifts. We've had the U2 movement where, women have found their voice to come out and to talk about the power imbalances in relationships, the harassment, the abuse. And so that has empowered women to talk about much more freely. And then, of course, we've had Black Lives Matter, which is, once again, a fundamental shift in terms of addressing biases and racism within our relationships. And so all of these are good, but we need to be aware that it has impacted how we date. And so that just as we look at just that landscape that has changed. So what are the things that I cover in this book? The first thing I do cover is I look at the relationship women and what has changed for women, the first, and then I have a chapter on what has changed for men. So let's first look at what has changed for women. One of the key things that I do talk about is just how in this stage of life women they are in menopause, and those are the realities of life. You in your menopause and your body's changing and responding, and you need to be comfortable with what's happening in your body, and you need to be able to communicate. How do you communicate what's happening to you? Because in the end, you're going to be in a relationship with somebody who needs to know what's happening to you. And so we explore that in quite detail. One of the things I also do is I start to lean into that letting go of the past. I touch on it and do go into it a little bit more later on. But for now, I do start to address that sense of letting go in order for us to build up our confidence, our self-esteem. Many of us, have come through difficult times, difficult relationships, and etc. So so the first chapter, we look at, what's happening to women. The second chapter, we look at what's happening to men. And it's interesting because, I kind of look at the first part is grooming. Have you had a look at yourself in the mirror for the last decade? Do you need some grooming tips? Do you need a fresh haircut? Do you need, to change up your wardrobe? Have clothes that more reveal your personality, your character, and sort of how do you need to just change up that wardrobe a little bit in order to get you ready. Dating is a journey and it needs some planning. And so for every journey, you're going to plan. And this is the same for dating. If we take dating as a journey that we need to prepare for ourselves with, and this is part of that preparation. One of the things for the men I also start to touch on is that kind of that letting go piece that, men often find also very hard to let go of their past and, how your past. And I do give a lovely example of this. I said, Marco, this was a difficult time for him. He was coming out of a 20-year relationship. And he carried a lot of unresolved feelings around his ex-wife. But he was afraid that history would repeat itself and that he would attract the same kind of partner who would hurt him all over again. But by recognizing his fears and anxiety, working on healing himself through therapy, self-reflection, and talking to trusted friends, Marco was able to approach dating with a much healthier mindset. He was able to learn to let go of his past and so that he could embrace the future. I give tons of examples like that throughout the book so that, maybe it could be something that you relate a little bit more. And so, this is part. Letting go is such a key piece of the journey. And I will be revisiting that over and over again. So part of just looking at is just being your authentic self, just being honest about who you are and projecting yourself as authentically, as I said, as you possibly can. One of the things that I find that often what people don't do is, and I know that I've been doing marriage preparation courses for years now, and I often find that a lot of people, when I speak to friends and family, they haven't done a premarital course before they got married. And so, part of just that getting yourself ready. We all do things that we you go on a trip and you prepare yourself for that trip. You buy a house and you do homework and there's a lot that you do in terms of preparation. But somehow when it comes to relationships, we don't do it. No, we don't. And so, I'm really going to encourage you at this stage of your life to really start to get to know just a little bit about you. What's your temperament? What makes you tick? What makes you lit up? And, what brings you down? What gives you go? And so those kinds of things I do talk about in quite depth. What do people say? If you ask somebody, one of your friends hey, tell me, how do you see me? What do they say about you? Do they say that, you're kind, you're warm, you are such a trustworthy friend? Or do they say, hey, you are always on a short fuse, and you need to slow things down. So what is the feedback that people are giving you about who you are? And so I really spend an entire chapter on this. It's a very important chapter for me, and that is in terms of just getting to know who you are and what really works for you. One of the key things that I do is I look at, are you introverted or are you extroverted? Like I am in my 20s, I was very extroverted. I thrived on, gatherings, parties, meetings, where people gathered. That is where I really flourished, and I used to get, but my partner, he was like, it was something that, drained him, and by the end of the evening he was completely drained, whereas I was completely energized. And so it really took us to work on how could we balance so that, at the end, we were both feeling comfortable with where we were at. So these are the things that we need to explore a little bit, because sometimes they do change over time. And like for me, I have found that my introversion has kicked in a little bit more. I don't need to have that energy in this intensity in the same way. Now that I'm in my 60s, I don't need that in the same way. But one of the things that we do need to know is how does this reflect us? What does it say about us? What are our love languages? What Dr. Gary Chapman talks about the love languages, and I did cover this in a couple of videos ago. But just to recap, what is your love language? Do you have acts of service? You'd rather do something to show the person that you really love and care about them. Some people's physical touch. They need that sort of physical hug and touch to show that they love. Other people are just words of affirmation, like they love just acknowledging that, hey, thank you for just the meal that you cooked, it was delicious, or, thank you for running that errand and stuff. So, some people are we are all wired differently, and that's fine. We different, but we do need to know, ourselves better, and so that we are able to learn to know what the other person needs and what makes them tick as well. One of the things that is super important in this particular chapter is I do talk about setting realistic expectations. And I think that this is very important for all of us to be aware of, is what kind of expectations do you have coming into this dating journey? We all come with baggage, and at this stage of life, if you're dating in your 50s, we all have baggage, and you have baggage too. So, so things gonna take time. Chemistry sometimes takes time. It's not going to be necessary. Our hormones are not working in the same way as it was when we were in our 20s. And so we need to be cognitive and just know that it's going to work differently this time around. No one is perfect. We all have our faults. We all have our flaws. And we're really wanting to meet somebody who can accept us for who we are. You don't want to find, if you've come out of a good marriage and you've had a good partner who's now deceased, you're not looking now for a clone for, that would be like your ex-partner. And so, just having those realistic expectations does help us to just have a different lens through which we see our journey. Next chapter, I do look at, okay, so we're using apps, dating apps, sort of how do you start? And part of being authentic is really just crafting, how do you craft a profile of yourself? Because it's really about marketing who you are. And so, how do you come up with a killer headline? Like, adventurous foodie seeks partner for the ultimate taste test. If you are kind of a foodie, or can a dog lover and a bookworm find them perfect match? And let's rewrite the rules of happily ever after. So, you can have fun with it, but, just also at the same time, just being very clear about your intentions, clear about what excites you, clear about who you are. If you are just looking for short, somebody just to accompany you to a movie, go for a day walk, or just a very superficial level of dating, that's fine. Just, be honest about it. Be honest about your photograph, for example. Have it updated. Don't have something that people don't know. Oh, gosh, I wouldn't have recognized you. So, doing that kind of updating of photographs. So be comfortable in your own skin. Be comfortable in how you present yourself as authentically, and so that you can also be comfortable with who you are. One thing I know that was, I was reading a couple of comments on Reddit, and a lot of the women were saying that this was an instance where a lot of people just were not being honest about who they were. And I think that rather be honest right up front than to change, because honesty and trust is such a fundamental part of a relationship, and you don't want to mess it up right at the beginning. And so rather let people see who you are, or your authentic self, and let them decide, and you decide sort of how you take things forward. I do give some guidelines on, sort of what to do on the first date. How do you choose a venue? I do suggest that, something like going for a walk, as opposed to having a sit-down meal at a first date. Have something where, that's a bit more activity-based, where you can do something fun, that's not just as you explore each other, and just keeping I provide some questions that you can ask on that first date, and the same for the second date, the third and the fourth and the fifth date. So 1 to 5 dates, I've got you covered. So it's just to get you going, what kind of questions to ask, what kind of venues to choose, all of that. What to do, with that very awkward part of when it comes to you at a restaurant and talking about, who's going to pay for the meal, and, sort of, everybody's different. We all have had different experiences, and so we want to just be open and honest, so that exactly. Somebody was sharing how she went on a coffee date, and it was so awkward, because how were they going to split they only had coffee, and and so these are the situations, you can use humor to soften expectations, but these are all the different kinds of situations that you're going to find yourself in. So I do walk through that quite a bit. three big areas I of course cover is communication, finances, and sex, and I would call that kind of the triad of relationships, which is communication. Communication obviously is a core piece of any relationship, and it's important that we explore this completely, and we improve our own communication skills. We know that there's verbal communication, the things that we say, and of course there's the non-verbal communication, which is equally powerful. Even though we don't say anything, we are communicating non-verbally. And so just looking at that communication piece, how do you share, from your side, how do you talk about your hobbies? How do you talk about TV shows that you are interested in? How do you see the world? How do you explore the world? How are you curious about what is happening in and around your world? Do you stay current, for example? Do you keep up to date with what's happening in the world, on news and stuff? So, these are all areas of, how you communicate. It says a lot about your own curiosity about the world and how you're going to be as a partner. Parts of communication, having good communication skills, is sharing, being empathetic, being a good listener, being an active listener. And these are all parts which I do go into much more detail. Choosing your timing, when do you say certain things, when do you bring up certain topics, when do you bring up how far do you need to be in the relationship to bring up issues of finance, for example. So the timing matters, and so these are all things that will help you to just be on top of things. Be mindful of your tone of voice. How do you come across? Do you come across as very approachable, or are you very empathetic? So avoid blaming. That's one of the things that I do cover, and pause when emotions run high, which if something comes up, just have a check on yourself, and have a bit of a time at what happens when you get a bit triggered, and also what are those things that are very triggering to you, and how do you cope when those things happen. So those are all the things that I do mention in the communication, much more in more detail, of course. The other areas, of course, is big section is the area of sex. And one thing that we know is that sex is obviously an important part of any relationship. And so, once again, with your communication skills, that how you communicate what's happening to your body. On the one hand, you find women going through menopause and, having, physical difficulties and being awkward, men having things like erectile dysfunction. And so these are topics that we need to talk about and we need to address. There are things that we can move forward on, but without communication, it's going to be quite difficult. One of the things I do need to say is that they have seen an increase in sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, and in this older population. And so obviously we need to talk about using protection when you are having sex. And so I talk about what's happening to our bodies, and how can we communicate that to our partners. Finances is always a very tricky topic. It's a very powerful topic. at this stage of life, you're coming in with having built up some equity over the years, and so lots of complications that you're going to need that communication skills in terms of timing. When do you disclose more information as the relationship continues? I do talk about red flags throughout the book, and I think red flags is just good for us to know when have someone crossed the boundary. We all have boundaries. We all have set a line in the sand, and when do people sort of overstep that, and what do you do? For example, if you get pressured into, when you're having sex and you're being pressured into doing things that you're not comfortable with, that is just disrespectful to you. And, it's important for you to know that when you say no, you mean no. And so, that those are important things. Just some dishonesty, is also, it's when somebody is being dishonest about their past, and you sort of find things out afterwards, that is definitely a red flag. When it comes to money, and you're getting pressured into doing getting involved with ventures that you didn't think you were interested in, and you're kind of being pressured all around you to do something that you just don't feel comfortable. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it over and over again. Always follow your gut. Your gut will always tell you something isn't right. And sometimes our gut says, hey, you just don't have enough information, to make some important decisions. And so, always follow your gut, whether it comes to sex, whether it comes to finances. Always, what is your gut saying? And then test it. If something isn't right, don't move forward until you've clarified things for yourself and you know how to move forward. The next chapter I do work is with in our 50s, we now have children, we have adult children that are interested in what's happening in our dating lives. And I think that it's important that we engage with them, involve them, but once again, when the timing is right. So I do talk about sort of when to introduce a partner to kids and to grandkids, and as you move forward, as the relationship grows, how do you sort of start, and when to do that, at what stage do you do that. I also talk about take just some time out to just taking self-care. I do focus on a lot of self-care. This journey is an arduous, it can be a very draining, emotionally and physically. Every time you're going on different dates, or and it's taking its toll on you. And so just being mindful that you're taking good care of yourself, that you're exercising, that you're taking time away. If you've had a couple of situations which wasn't great, take time out, give yourself time to refresh before you move on again. And so, these are important. I give some helpful strategies as to how you can do that. And then also, on the flip side, I explore other parts of relationships that we in the dating world we don't talk about. And so I do go there. Where we're talking about at this stage of life, you have people who might have a diagnosis that you haven't worked with before. You date, this might be your first time that you are dating, and so just, how do you navigate through somebody who's got a diagnosis that you're not used to, and how do you just navigate through that? I also talk about toxic relationships. And I know this is something that, is not often spoken about, but it's something that is a reality. We in Canada, we are, and the rest of the world, I think, is close to that. 1 in 3 relationships are in a toxic relationship. And so it is something that we do need to be aware of. And I do have 3 chapters that I talk about that kind of relationships. The first one is I talk about narcissism. How do you see the signs? What is a narcissist? How do how does it play out in relationship? Because sometimes we have friends that are narcissists, and but how does it come out in a relationship? Because we do know that people often start with relationships where what we call love bombing, where the person is showered with affection and love and what you think is love, only to find later that this person is very controlling and they are much more centered on themselves rather than you. And sometimes you kind of far gone in the relationship, and you kind of need to know, how do I navigate through that? I also go into the difference between inter-partner violence, IPV, and I look at coercive control, and I look at what are the similarities, how are they very similar in terms of they're both very toxic, but how do they play out in relationships? Interpartner violence is much more. Violence is sometimes more prevalent, as opposed to a coercive control relationship where things are used in a different way to undermine and undervalue the other person. And so these are all things that I do go into much, much more depth. Some exciting chapters that I do also cover is looking at introversion and extroversion. I mentioned that earlier on. I have a chapter dedicated to that, because I think that and sometimes we are a little bit of both, and we kind of need just to know how do I present myself in a relationship when I'm one or the other, or when I have a little bit of both. One of the areas that we have seen that we do talk about, and there's not much spoken about it, and that is neurodivergence. And I must say that there's much more information today than there was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, having people diagnosed with ADD and ADHD was few and far between. Today we know of colleagues, family, friends that have some of them have a diagnosis, some of them have all the symptoms, but they're not necessarily diagnosed. And so and you might feel that, hey, I've had it all my life and I've never been diagnosed. How do you interact, and what are the things that can be helpful for you and your partner as you explore this new part of having this inner relationship? So I do give some strategies, some tools to address that, and the same goes for disabilities, physical disabilities. I have friends that have where there's a physical disability, and they have a wonderful, warm, rich marriage. And so we do sort of unpack that a little bit more. And so the entire book covers almost everything that you know possibly can encounter as you start on this very exciting journey of just finding love and unlocking love and second chances. So I hope that this has been great so far, that you are excited, that you'll have a guide that you can go to whenever you are needing to more information on a particular area. And so as part of the special today, I am excited to say that I have I'm giving away some free copies for the next 3 days, from February the 13th to February the 16th. You can get a free copy of this book, of this guide, on Amazon, and I'm going to put it in the description below, how you can access it so you can have your own free copy. The only thing I really would love you to do is, number one, please subscribe to this channel. It will really help me. But secondly, if you please leave a review on Amazon on how did you find, was the information useful and helpful. And thirdly, I am going to put my email address for you to contact me if you felt that you've read the book, there's a lot of information there that you would like a session, a coaching session. I'm giving some free coaching sessions. If you email me, I will send you a Zoom link, and you can spend 15 minutes with me and just give me some top line information about what you're going through, and I'll be able to send you a link and we can have a quick chat. So that's it for today. I know it's been a much longer session than which normally happens, but this is really quite exciting for me to be here today to share with you the launch of this book. I'm so happy that it's just happened before Valentine's Day, and so don't forget, 13th to the 16th of February is the time that you can get your free copy off Amazon. And so with that, I look forward to hearing comments from you. I look forward to getting emails from you. So yeah, let's do this, and thank you for your time. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.